Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is the Poet is a Human with the Philosopher Dunamis on this week's episode number 11, Fight for Truth. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way in. And if you like us, please consider subscribing to keep up with our episodes on YouTube and give us a follow on X.
Fightcast is here to empower individuals to live healthier, master their finances, pursue their dreams, and inspire others through self-awareness and global impact. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only, and not financial advice.
Dunamis. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'll say this week it's been crazy with everything going on. So there's this half half angry and uh, you know ecstatic at the same time. There's just excitement. Finally, some of these things that we've worked hard for a long time to actually get vindicated with a lot of the information that's coming out now. I think that's it's a good feeling, but I'm also upset because it's of course a lot worse than I thought it was. How are you feeling?
I feel great. I really feel great. And I'll be honest with you guys. I know that this is going to sound a bit of a shocker considering the podcast we run. I've really been a bit disconnected from everything. Not to say that I don't, or at least I'm not aware of what's been going on, but I've been disconnected just because I feel like I'm going to get misled one way or the other. So I try to just take things, I'm taking it in stride, I'm taking the information and I'm doing my own research, but I'm not there when the news is breaking or anything like that. And really, Dunamis, this is I've talked to you, the most when it comes to this. And yeah, I just feel like the motion is going to be the motion will be televised, man. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, I'm not tripping off of that. I mean, what do people expect at this point? I think maybe that's my thing. Maybe I'm just not surprised by anything anymore, and I'm just like, all right, cool. What else? What else you got? Duh, we knew this. Duh, we knew that. Duh, we knew this. So what else? What do we expect? This is what we've talked about. And this goes back, and I'm gonna go crazy with this esoteric. So let me slow my roll and shut my mouth here. But I'm just when we talk about these things, and we talk about transparency, and we talk about truth, and we talk about these are the things that we want, and we start getting them in increments. Why are you surprised all of a sudden? Why is there's this uproar? Okay, now let's talk about it. And what's the next steps? Solutions. Solutions.
There's only so much. What your approach is exactly the correct way, I think, to go about it as well, because you don't want to get all behind one particular idea and then find out that it wasn't exactly as great as it sounded. That's really oftentimes what we do get. We get bits of information incrementally, and sometimes you have to ride that wave. It's like, oh, this sounds too good to be true. Oh, it really was too good to be true. But hey, it's still a good thing. you know so you're right, we don't really know exactly what is all going to come out of this. I think it's been very positive, maybe not from the people that are getting paid this extra government money that has come out of the United States government fraudulently, but for everyone else, I think it's not really a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's not a it's about people, and it's all of our money. It belongs to all of us. We want to make sure it's getting spent in the correct way. I think that's probably, I would think, that should be a uncontroversial subject. And I expect just as many Republicans to be on the take and to go down from this as Democrats. You know,
R-
Frank.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's not about any party, and it's not about any favors. It's about where our money goes. Money's always going to get applied somewhere where somebody doesn't agree. Okay. But the purpose of exposing these budgets, and I don't even like the word expose because I don't want to put a negative connotation, bringing these things to the light to really see what's actually going on. And this has been an issue for a while. We don't like, where is this money going? And now we're seeing things that are coming to the light. Like, what was it? What, $2.7 trillion?
$2.7 trillion, and that's fraudulent. This is again. They said it in a this was actually at the White House press conference. So they said that they found $2.7 trillion worth of fraud going overseas. I mean, that's 8% of the entire debt. It's crazy, that kind of a number. But even that, it's like, but if I were to tell you, being the person that I am, that I'm going to believe what's being said from behind that podium after, for the last 4 years, knowing that I was lied to every single day from behind that same podium, that would mean that all of a sudden I believe the government because now the Republican side is in power, and that's not the case. So I'm going to continue to do my due diligence, and I think it makes sense to wait and see how this plays out. You know, give it time. You always know when the news story hits. Oftentimes it's sensationalist, and you have to wait 2 or 3 days for the chips and the real information to start kind of coming out, and then they'll go back and correct the story. So I definitely think that while some of this information can be intriguing and exciting, I think the reason it's potentially exciting is because if they can cut this fraud out going forward. I know we're in a big load of mess with the debt right now, but it provides hope, that this isn't just a spiraling out of control mess that we won't ever be able to get out of if just less than a month in, they're finding billions and billions of dollars worth of waste. It would make sense that we can do something to fix it. That gives me hope right now. But stuff is broken, and stuff is secret, and stuff is hidden, and there's, if nothing else, since 2020, I think many wise Americans and people around the world have decided and learned not to put a lot of trust into what's being said at the highest levels of their governments.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about all of it, and I think about where we went wrong in the beginning. Yeah, and it's not about placing blame on anybody because everybody had a choice at the end of the day on whether to be persuaded one way or to be persuaded another way, or to take both of that and break it down and make it make sense to you, to make your own decision off of it. And we have too many people on the left, or we have too many people on the right. We just have a teeter totter that's not balanced. We have a Libra scale that's not balanced. We have a pendulum swing that just falls off on the other side of the table. We're not thinking for ourselves. Now, again, where we can go and, all right, well, why isn't anybody thinking for themselves? Because we weren't classically conditioned to think for ourselves. We were classically conditioned to go off of the majority. Okay. But newsflash, with the way that modern technology is set up now, is you don't have to believe any of that. And reality, you didn't have to believe any of that before. But the thing with human existence, it's easier to fall in line when things are new, especially when something doesn't make sense. So when you see something that makes more sense than what you've been able to process, it's easier to go off of that because there's a level of security. And also that also goes into humans developing lazy habits, because now somebody's figured the answer out for you, so you don't have to figure it out either. So it's all of this stuff, man. It gets loaded. It gets really loaded, and it also, when it comes back to the circle, It always ends with you. It starts with you and it ends with you because you have choices at the end of the day. And nobody wants to hold themselves accountable, or at least it's the hardest pill to swallow is to hold yourself accountable for the things that are happening in your life. That's not easy to do. And there's a lot of circumstances, there's a lot of scenarios. I just know that if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm leaving a club and shots fire off, someone gets shot or I get hit in my leg, whatever, I'm going to get mad at the person who shot me. But in reality, should probably be mad at myself for being out of the club at 3 o'clock, knowing that there probably wasn't anything good going on. We, as humans, now we have no excuse. All of the information is right in front of us. Any fact check or anything that we want to do our research on, we can do those things and we can develop our own perspective off of that. It was a lot. I felt like it was a lot easier back then to just fall in line because a lot of these things were new. And one, you didn't have to figure it out. So it sounded true, sounded good. He sounds smart. Okay, might not steer us in the wrong direction. Who knows? 50 years down the road, okay, we might debunk all this stuff, but man, that's 50 years of classically conditioning, of building habits.
Well, it's interesting that you've used that term too classically, and you mentioned that before as well when you were talking about not being conditioned to think for ourselves. And it's a fact that John D. Rockefeller played a pivotal role in education.
Mm,
Now, you might say, why would we want to eliminate the Department of Education? And on the left, the easy target is to say, well, clearly he doesn't care about the education of our children and wants to defund education. Now, the fact of the matter is, all of the teachers, all of the schools, most of everything is handled at the state level. There is
mhm,
funding that comes into the states, but that's money that came out of our tax dollars to Washington, D.C., which is basically a bureaucracy.
mhm,
What they're doing there is they choose and send money back to certain states, and they do distribute it based on maybe this state gets a little bit extra because they needed a little bit more than this state over here. This state paid in a little bit more, but they don't get quite as much back. And
population, I'm sure a lot of different factors.
yeah, so they
Yeah.
they 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 do, let's just say that they do some amount of that, and if there's any sort of good that they do, it might be in um some amount of redistribution that, let's say, is for the benefit of some state over another.
Okay.
The problem is that they pushing for a particular set of ideals or curriculum, and what you were talking about before about having this, we've heard about common core and having these ways that people are taught. You have memorization, and
Hmm.
then you're taught how to reason about things, and then you're taught logic and how to debate, typically when you're older. That pattern in a classical curriculum existed hundreds of years ago, and up until about the early 1900s was the standard in America, that you would learn how to read this particular way, and many students would learn Latin along with English. You would
Hmm.
learn for the first, what you would call the first 4 years of your elementary education were the, oh goodness, I even forget what they call it. There was logic, rhetoric,
Hmm.
and the first 4 years are basically your memorization years, where
Yeah.
you're
Yep.
learning that and building upon it. And then they would teach you how to reason in your sort of middle school years. And as you're getting into high school, that is the rhetoric phase, where you learn how to think for yourself and create your opinions and to articulate those opinions in debate with somebody else. So the whole point being that the Rockefeller educational system took that old system out and replaced it with the public school system that we have today. And it was very important that they control the educational system so that we thought a particular way about things. They could craft us right from elementary school up through, and that's why the public school system is such a big deal for so many parents because parents want an excellent education for their child, not just what everybody else gets. I think everyone, regardless of who they are, what your background is, they want an excellent education for their child. And a, a big of the one of the big things in the state of Texas recently has been the fight for school choice that goes
Mm,
along with this too. But to get back around to truth of things is that the failures of the educational system are all a part of keeping and hiding from the population things that they don't want us to know, you know?
mhm.
And we're going to start finding some stuff out here soon, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh yeah. We were taught to regurgitate. We were taught to throw things onto proficiency tests, all of these standardized testings from middle school, from the practice tests up to high school. We were taking ACTs. We would pay $50 per ACT. Then you were now put into another bracket of, okay, where do I sit now to go to college? Then let's throw sports in there too. And then you got AP classes, all of this. And then you get up to college and it's wild, man. Cause I remember watching movies of people in college and these professors just completely throwing away everything that you were ever taught. And it's true. Got into this liberal arts college, Urbana University, beautiful university, no longer here anymore, but the best education I ever received of just debunking everything that I ever learned in my years of youth and adolescence, debunked everything. I double majored in criminal justice and psychology. I wanted to do neuropsychology, but they didn't have the program, so I combined the two to be able to get the education that I needed. Biopsychology was one of my favorites, and outside of the psychology aspect, well, not outside of the psychology aspect, or I guess the chemical, so much of it. The political science. I had an incredible political science professor. Professor Enslow was his name. Shout out to Professor Enslow. He debunked everything, and it was his course was the hardest course. It was very hard to get an A in his course because people either just didn't care or they didn't show up to class. They didn't give a crap about it. I take pride in saying this. I got an A in that class.
That's
I,
awesome.
I got an A in that class, and it was because I challenged it, because I challenged myself, and that's all he ever wanted. And his classes were just an hour of, you're either going to participate or you're not. And the more you participated, the better the conversation was, obviously. But yeah, man, if I could, I wish that I was able to just give that energy to others. Is that's not easy. It's not easy to do, especially when you've been taught something for so long in your years, and to just break everything and start over again, that's not easy.
The they call that cognitive dissonance, right? The
Mhm.
feeling that you get when you're approached with the new information that causes you to question things that you've held very close as you grow up and start to see. I think this probably happens to everybody in every age. This is really the hero's journey, but you go through and you start to see life as you grow up in a different light, right? There's always
Mhm.
things that get uncovered that we thought we knew when we were younger that are now so different in a different perspective from a different perspective after you've been through things, you know?
Right. I think too that it's also important to feed your inner child. 'Cause that child that had that imagination, the one that didn't have the worry of the and the weight of the world of and their projections, like that's something that we need to continue to feed. We need to continue to normalize that reality, because that was a time where it was just you were very pure, and there was no limits. on what to.
Fearlessness too.
You know, it's that fearlessness. And as adults, as we get weighed down and bonkered on with these routine jobs and routine thinking and routine mission statements of this, you start to build these, you start to build more cores, but now it's off of what the bank wants, or it's whatever your profession is, it's what they want. Okay, you're going off of them, and that's great that you're able to fall in line and play your role. But what about you? What about, what does any of this mean to you? What do you want your kids to take out of the example that you're wanting to provide for them? How do you want them to look at you? I don't have kids yet, but it may be down the road. But even as an uncle to a lot of my friends' kids, I want them to be able to see me in a light where Uncle Izzy is everywhere. He is always doing something. He's doing some cool stuff. And when he comes around, he's always got some really interesting stories and some awesome insight. And their parents are like that too, man. Their parents are just like that. So when I come around, it's nothing new to them. It's nothing that they haven't heard before. It solidifies everything, because now they see not only what their parents are talking about, the people that their parents are surrounded by as well. And it all comes together full circle. So when they turn 13, 15, 30, 40 years old, then now they're doing the exact same thing. And that's how we break these curses, man. And it could be micro, it could be macro, or it's the micro to the macro. It could be anything. You can be a privileged person and still not be able to see the other side of what the world has to provide, and vice versa. Survival, fight, flight, all of that. Understanding what words means. We're talking about that in the space here a while ago about zeptoseconds. And one of my dudes was like, "What does that even mean?" It's the second within the milliseconds.
Yeah. Yeah, the looking at time and the unfolding of time is always super interesting. It sometimes deal with milliseconds, microseconds, and I've once or twice dealt with the idea of I don't even think they really ever get down to nanoseconds for the most part, even in programming. It's generally the smallest unit you generally get down to is
Yeah.
like a microsecond.
Hmm.
Um, and then milliseconds being there's 1,000 in a second. Yeah, we could totally nerd out on this and on time and on to bring it even back around to Doge. One of the first things they proposed was fixing time. They were going to fix daylight savings time and make it so that we didn't have to worry about switching the clocks around. And that that tickles my heart, man. That I love that. I that as a programmer, it's something that I have to deal with, as you can imagine, on a website.
Hmm.
You have to account for things like, is it daylight savings time when you're even displaying the current time, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, at
I mean,
least if you're calculating off of UTC, which is for those not familiar, there is a single time in the world. It's in Greenwich, England, or Greenwich. Not sure if how to pronounce it exactly. Somewhere around London, there's a line. It's the median time, and from that line in England is accounted. It doesn't change for daylight savings time or anything like that. But if you're smart and you record that time in your database because of its stability, then when you're displaying that time, you have to account for whether it's daylight savings time or not, and that's not fun.
dude, I was just looking this up too as we started to nerd out a little bit, because I wanted to look into Zepto a little bit more, and it's actually the smallest unit of time ever measured, 1 trillionth of a billionth of a second.
Wow.
Um, and scientists back, it was in Goethe University. Fight me if I'm grammatically wrong for saying what I'm saying. In Germany, measured a zeptosecond by timing how long it took a photon to pass through a hydrogen molecule. 1.3 zeptoseconds is the smallest experimentally controlled time delay in a photon field.
Wow.
Dude.
this is not necessarily a time to just sit around, and when you discover new things, you have to incorporate that into your flow, into your belief system. So if a new piece of information comes along, it's important to be open, even if it seems crazy. I mean, we're in a time when we're going to be finding out about who assassinated and why John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as potentially even declassification on other highly sensitive subjects and topics. If if everything that we've found out so far is any indication, what we're going to find out in the next year or two could potentially rock the foundation of what we believe about a lot of things to the core.
Hmm.
And in that kind of scenario, you have to have a stable foundation that you can stand on. And this is where we talk about truth, because it seems like we're in a time where truth has shifted and become something. It used to be something that was so clear and easy to see, easy as day. You knew it, but that was all an illusion as well. If it was during our lifetime, that whole sense was an illusion as well. And we're waking up to that fact now. And so you have to be open to the idea that as new information comes in, even if it just seems absolutely crazy, like something that there's no way that we sent $2.7 trillion overseas, you know. I'm gonna wait and see. I'm gonna wait, like you said, we'll wait and see the facts come out. We have to wait and see what can even be done about this stuff. And even something like that, what are the chances that any of that money is recoverable? You know what I'm saying? If can it even be tracked down where this money went? Can anybody be held to account? There's still so many questions,
Right.
and we're still so early in this process. But I did think it was important. It was important for us to have this conversation this week as all of this stuff is happening, because our truth is so tied to our identity, and it's so critical and so tied in with our mind and our mental health and all of these other things. It If anything, I would advocate, it's important to maybe don't be afraid of having principles. It's important to have principles, but have strong opinions loosely held.
Right. Ooh,
You
I
know,
like that. Say that again, bro. Say
S-
that again.
strong opinions loosely held.
Ooh, man, that's deep. That's deep, y'all. I hope you're writing that one down.
Yeah,
I
because
really do.
sometimes you might have a very strong conviction in something. New information is going to come along that's going to completely change everything. And the worst thing is the cognitive dissonance tries to make us do these backflips in our brain. We're trying to, in our mind, justify, and we're trying to discredit, and we're trying to fact check, and we're trying to do all
Mhm.
these things to just because I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to believe it. I can't believe it. It just couldn't be true. And that's a difficult place to be stuck in. I say that as somebody who's been stuck there before. And it's important to move past it,
Yeah, the
because
the
yeah.
sunken place. It's almost like the sunken place that you're speaking about.
So what exactly is that?
So the sunken place is, well, some people would also look at that as the trap, being stuck in your own mind, that perpetual loop, insanity, so many different ways to just label it as being stuck in your own head. And that sunken place where you can see all of these things and you see the potential and you're reaching out and you think that those things you're not able to achieve those things, but all you had to do is just get up. And I wanted to I wanted to continue to expand on this. Obviously, it's the topic, but just even looking into our own governance into the Cardano community. I don't want to go too crazy into it, but it's there's been a lot of emotions up in the air with, now we're looking at the budget and we're looking at where things are going or where things aren't going, and this transparency is again, it's creating a lot of different emotions, and everybody has perspective and opinions on it. And I was in a space where we were talking about this, and a lot of our core leaders, and this isn't specifically geared towards the Finest LLC and the SLR per se, but there's a lot of people that have been in the Cardano community for a very long time since it came out, and there's a lot of investment into this, and this is, I don't want to say a ticket for a lot, but a lot of people put a lot of time and they've put a lot of effort into building relationships. And the unique thing about the SLR Finest is we're not chained no pun intended, to just one entity of this Cardano community. We were meant to be in other chains to be able to give the word of education and literacy and crypto technology and music and culture. And that is our duty. That is our obligation to be able to outreach in these programs and start bringing people together, because it's much deeper than the Cardano community and it's much deeper than anything that we could be debating about. At the end of the day, we're supposed to create a decentralized community, and what it really means to be decentralized is a distribution of power. That's what decentralization means. I feel like we get this, it's misconstrued in what decentralization is. I feel like we've built upon similar principles of the exact same government that we wanted to go against, or maybe some of the radicals will say overthrow. I don't want to hear any of those words anymore, because it's hypocrisy to me. And I'm not saying I don't want to say anything negative about the Cardano community. I'm speaking my truths. And when it comes to this, so a lot of people, again, that have invested a lot of their time and their efforts into the relationships into this community. And I feel like as a Cardano community and a lot of the founding fathers, there is a level of accountability that needs to be taken upon. And you need to take a look at much more than just money, because we are more than money. And when you look at it, that money has no value to it unless it's by the consumer themselves. Because if the consumer decided that they weren't going to spend a dime anymore on Louis Vuitton or Gucci or Puji or freaking Champion, then guess what happens to those businesses? There are no businesses. Value your people. But in order for people to be valued, people have to value themselves first. And that's a pill that a lot of people are having a hard time swallowing right now. Pride and ego will kill a man and a woman in a heartbeat. So I want us to take a step back and remember, when you point one finger, three more are pointing back at you. The community that you want and the change that you want to see starts within yourself. So we want our community to be more transparent, and we want to be more truthful about our motives and our act. Well, that starts within. That starts within. This isn't just to blame anybody at all. We all have a role and an obligation within this community, and we need to live to those things. We need to adhere to these words that we put out into this community. Never over don't over promise and under deliver. That's one thing that I've learned in my life, and that's definitely something I've learned a lot in business, where you are around a bunch of people that have 50, 60, 30,000 different ideas, but you can't get one done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's get one done first. All right, cool. But with this whole decentralization and distribution of power, what does that mean? Let's get back to the drawing boards. Where's the one pagers? Where's the mission statements?
Yeah. And we already and they put something, so we have a constitution. We're not bashing IOG, Cardano Foundation,
No.
Intersect, or any of the players in that at all. And that's not the type of voice that we want Fightcoin to reflect in the community. What we want to reflect in the community, though, is I think that it's important throughout the process. when funds are being spent, when discussions are even being made where these numbers came from. There's room for transparency that may have already been missed,
Mhm.
but rather than criticize that, I think it's better for us to elaborate on what we want to see going forward. What I would really like to see is a log of the documentation that comes out of Intersect. We have, even if it's just something like GitHub, they may have this, they might not. I plead the fifth on being ignorant on this fact, but it seems to me like you could take a document, for example, that they're working on, that they're discussing. I know we're past the constitution phase potentially, but let's just say there's another document that they're working on, or a budget, whatever that is. And that document over time is going to change. It's going to
Mhm.
change many, many times. Oftentimes, we were presented with probably the last iteration of that document and allowed to vote on it or talk about it or whatever it is, right?
Right.
What I think needs to happen is when they're in the idea phase at Intersect, it would make a lot of sense to record that document in a GitHub repo or in some event sourced mechanism where you see all of the changes that have happened to the document. I can go back in time and see, oh, in the first draft of this document, they didn't have that line that everybody's talking about. It's important information, when we're arguing and discussing over certain things, to be able to go back and see how a document has evolved over time, the life cycle of that document. So I would personally like to see that. I would like to see the level of transparency, and if there are meetings that take place, whether they're if they're behind closed doors, and if they have some form of minutes that can be shared. But even better yet, we're in this age of technology. Why not have their meetings on Zoom and record them and just make them all available and public and transparent? There's no reason that that can't happen.
I love that. I love that. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And this whole day and age of you can't handle the truth and secret meetings and whatever to protect this person or that or this entity, that stuff is played out. That stuff is played out. And anymore now, that sounds like an excuse to me. That just sounds like shady business, is
It
what it
does.
sounds
And
like.
if it's not now, it will lead to that. I think that's what we're learning in this whole deal here, is
Yes.
with what Doge is uncovering. Yes, there may have been a time at some point in the past when our government wasn't corrupt and just absolutely on the take. But it's becoming clear, and will continue to become clear over the next few months, I believe,
Oh, yeah.
how
I agree
bad
with you.
things are. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And if you don't think that things are bad or you don't think that things have been bad, you're completely jaded. You are. There's a reason why we're having these conversations right now, whether it be in the governance of the United States of America or the world, or even in Cardano governance. These are the things that we're talking about. Why we're having this conversation again. I sound like a broken record, Dunamis, when I talk about these things, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change anything. None of this stuff changes, guys, and that's where I really want to. This is actually practice. This is an exercise to be able to recognize the things that we're saying right now and take them for what they are, develop your own perspective on it, and just realize throughout this entire conversation, nothing has changed because everything always falls back into breaking a cycle and being able to exercise your mind and thinking for yourself, understanding what insanity means, understanding the loop, how to break those things, classically conditioning, regurgitation, proficiencies, and all of this stuff, and how all of that applies into your everyday life. All of it. You're not just limited to one thing. Being on this universe it's a blessing. And there's one thing I also want to put emphasis on too that I also spoke about. In life, there is suffering, but living life is not suffering. Just because that there is suffering doesn't mean you have to suffer in your own life.
That's
You
it.
again are in control of what is suffering and what isn't suffering, and even how that is defined. Because suffering could be as simple as, oh, Well, I'm on YouTube TV, but all of my friends have a Hulu subscription, so I'm not able to have a conversation with them the next day about the Keeping Up with the Kardashians because I don't have the Hulu subscription, and that could be an idea of suffering. And then when you think about it, it's funny. That it's funny at that point. So really, what is suffering? It's what we choose to bring into our lives.
Totally.
That's all that that is. You're like, if you're taking all of the troubles of the world and you're like, man, the world's crazy, and then all of a sudden you start thinking about your life is crazy and stuff. It's like, bro, you are thinking about everything that happened to you 12 years ago and all of these other things, but none of that's happening to you now. None of that's happening.
Yeah. Uh, this is the thing that I think that we're getting to. It has to do with people's mind as well as their truth. What we were sort of talking about before, that razor blade between what is absolutely true versus what is someone's individual truth, right? And a person's, I think you could almost say that everyone's individual truth is their own. It's a projection. It comes from inside your own mind. It's something that you're casting out. And so many times now, what we're seeing with mental illness are a lot of people that are, well, we joke around about some of these politicians that say things like you're stealing, you're lying, and then it turns out it was the other way around. But I don't say that to say anything about some particular politician, but to illustrate that this is the human condition. This is what we do. We get in our head, we get in our mind, we see and feel a- and emote out of our spirit and out of our connection with everything and everyone. And so many of us are broken, and out of that brokenness, we we see as well as we speak and project out all of those things that are inside of us. And you can see it so clearly on some people that have it together and other people that don't have it together. And the ones that don't have it together, they think the entire world doesn't have it together. And the ones that have it together are saying, all right, I see what's going on. I've got a mission. I'm going to put things in motion.
Yeah.
And so much of being smart about, I think one of the things that's I've learned recently, this is a little off topic, but it has to do with the difference between smart money and retail money. The
Okay.
difference between this is a worthwhile tidbit, but the truth of it is recognizing the truth, recognizing what's going on before the masses.
Right.
And when you do that, you can position yourself. See, the masses will chase a chart. It's like the whole GameStop thing. Everybody wants to pile in because they saw GameStop going crazy. But when you're piling in because you see something going crazy, you're most assuredly buying the top, right?
Hmm.
And that's how people get wrecked over and over and over again, is that herd mentality, is not thinking for yourself, is thinking along with everybody else and going with it. So the way to win is quite literally to see the opportunities that other people are not looking at,
Hmm.
and understand there may be a condition to where that is going to change in the
Hmm.
future.
Yep.
Position yourself accordingly, and then you just sit with patience and wait for the masses to do what they do.
Right.
And that is what smart money does. That is what they do.
Yes.
They and then they dump on retail investors who are buying the top. But that's effectively the game. That is the game. That is the truth of what goes on. And people say markets are manipulated. It's not. There's people that understand how to play the game, and they buy and they hold and they wait with patience, and then when things rip and they change, they're reacting to the situation. They're not. They were already in gold when gold went, you know above 2000 and then above 2500 and then above 2800, and everybody's now talking about gold because gold is almost at $3000, but $3000 is not the price to buy gold, you know.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yes.
You know who I feel in the Cardano community does a really good job with just keeping up and just staying ahead of their time in the way that they market themselves?
Who?
Clay Nation.
Oh yeah.
Clay Nation. Shout out to the whole Clay Nation out there. And it's really an honor to be a part of, at least to be able to have a good Charlotte PFP, man. Shout out to everybody out there that's running that, because you guys, for years, the 2 years that I've been involved in this, I've just seen nothing but constant improvements in the expansion of that community, and the transparency of that community is something very impressive. I feel like we take these things from, some of these other communities and apply them into what we're looking at mission wise. We would see what we would want to see. That was the whole point of this Cardano. I wasn't first involved in governance, but as I started to stay into these spaces a little bit more, went to Texas, went to the committee, met the people there, and really got to get a gauge of what it is that we're talking about and understanding it more. Having a D rep in our party, which is super dope because you get that information every day if you want it. Um, these are the things that Cardano initially founded themselves on and took pride on, and have taken the same approach that they wanted to go against. So, whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen of the Cardano community, again, this is love, and this is coming from somebody who takes pride in his brand and his product as well, being music, and being able to have a platform to be able to showcase that, and you giving us the ability to be able to showcase those talents. I want to continue to see this community prosper in that space. And we owe it to the people that are involved in this community. And you also owe it to yourselves as being a founder in this community as well, to really shed light on what it means to distribute power.
The first real live event that I had a chance to go to was Consensus in
Okay.
Austin. It was well, I didn't go to Consensus. They had a Cardano event, and the Clay founders were there, and they had a booth right up in the front, and I got a chance to meet them. Still have not baked my clay. So, but I just remember not only how friendly and inviting their community is, and I've always loved that. I've never had the time to stay as involved in all of the different NFT communities that I got into early on in Cardano, and so for that, I wish I had spent more time in the Clays Discord, but I love their space, the Clays After Dark space. Every time I go and drop in there, is super chill, and definitely want to shout out to Clays After Dark because
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Clays. Shout out to Clays After Dark. Shout out to everybody involved. Again, we have so many wicked projects within our community, so many people that we could spend a whole podcast naming them, that are making our community a better place. And we just want to be a part of that and continue to build on that. But
that
I digress.
that's exactly what you're talking about, though, is the Cardano ethos that goes deeper than the money concerns.
Oh, yeah.
There's the community aspect that goes back to even, my the first NFT project I got into was Zombie Chains, and it was art only. The whole thing was it's just killer art, and it was everybody that just loved the art that got together into it, and he eventually opened Discord, but the those communities, like, I never felt like the thing about the Cardano community in general. I just want to say the thing that attracted me in the first place was the fact that so many people were real. There wasn't there wasn't just all these PFP tokens talking about going to the moon and becoming rich and billionaires and all of that. Like, it seemed like there was at that same time in the Ethereum space.
Mhm.
And yet it's like I come over here and there was definitely Space Buds and the Clays and Hosky was doing his thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I really dug in with Jimmy in Six City, man. Like I
Shout out to
won
Six City.
absolutely. The you know for what he did, he provided an actual service in putting music on the blockchain. It was something that I actually got joy out of, rather than these images that sit in your wallet that you never look at or never pay attention to. I really enjoyed the fact that there was utility from the start in what Jimmy was doing. That and Book.io. Those were the two projects right off the bat that really struck me as being useful today.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh
um,
yeah.
and I always wanted to be a part of projects that were useful today. I always kept my eyes on projects that showed a lot of promise for the future.
Hmm.
Definitely still have my Clay Nation land. So
Yeah,
look,
buddy.
looking
Yes.
looking forward to all that stuff, man. Like I would love to see metaverses. Even Pavia, is sort of defunct now, but those are still NFTs on chain, and you never know. You never know what can happen in the future.
Right.
I always felt early on with Hosky, as a developer myself, that if Hosky ever did figure out how to rug, now we know they're not good at doing stuff like that.
No.
They never could quite figure out how to rug us, but I always felt like if they did, man, that's a policy. It's a policy ID. All it really takes is a developer to love some project, to want
Hmm.
to do a CTO.
Yeah.
And that's really what Fight is. Fight is a CTO. We just happened to take over right at the very beginning. It was a rug from the start. But so we've been around and built this thing up from the ground, it really feels like. And that's really what we've done. But the the Cardano ethos is there is a little bit of a libertarian ethos in here. And that comes from Bitcoin. There is a little bit of I want to be here with hard money that the government can't control, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I think along with that comes I don't want to hurt you and I don't want you to hurt me kind of, that also goes
Exactly.
along with libertarianism. and
Right.
and because of that, it's such a peaceful coexistence kind of a thing. And I would like to see us continue that forward. I would like to see the governance. I'd like to see everybody figure out how to find compromise. And I think that there are enough smart people in this space. I actually came across that libertarian budget. I don't know if you're familiar with it. There was a budget that was put out in contrast to the Intersect budget. So there's a couple budgets floating out there on
Okay.
on the interwebs. I would say that this is another one of those things where maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be um, exactly what Intersect has proposed, and it doesn't need to necessarily be something that gives Intersect nothing, which is what the other budget had proposed. So
Yeah.
there's definitely good conversations to be had. And when we want to find the best truth, because maybe there's not a perfect truth for us when it comes to the Cardano budget, right? But
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of people that at least feel strongly about it and have strong opinions on it. There's always been so much diversity built in, and love and caring in the Cardano community. I remember from the start, I will say there has been times in the history since then where it has felt different at times. But
Hmm.
and more people have come in to the space as well, and that always changes things. But I want to believe that still in the heart of hearts of what the Cardano community is, we're still that small group of folks that want to be able to compromise and work and come together and work on solutions and not just fight and find problems.
Yeah. And the wealth will come with that. You have people that have already invested their time and their their hard earned into this, into starting all of this, all of those things will come. Don't force a square into a circle and vice versa. Let those things come. The best way for that wealth to accumulate is to continue to listen to the people and continue to feed each other with logic and rationale, thought, emotion, action, but always, always at the end of the day, taking your words and putting them into action in the best way that you can, and being as honest as you can too, and bringing all of that together.
I love that. And let's wrap up this great conversation and say that make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe if you haven't on YouTube, and give us a follow on X. And if you made it all the way to the end, drop a compass emoji down in the comments. All right.
Do it.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been great, Izzy, and can't wait to do it again next week.
Yes, sir. Number 11.
Awesome. Never give up the fight.
Never give up the fight.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain, pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane, pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less. You check as I'm chess, what's happening next? Yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson. He got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill, no discretion. Your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try to change, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions and the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds, they can stay soft. You can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try to change